Welcome to the Wisconsin Music Podcast.
This week on Wisconsin Music Podcast, we're thrilled to welcome Dr. Hannah Roik, Doctor of Audiology and Gold Certified Music Audiologist, making waves in the music industry by specializing in hearing care for musicians. With a background as a musician and theater educator herself, Hannah knows firsthand how essential it is to protect your ears, your most important instrument, of course. As the founder of Melody Audiology LLC, she provides in-person services in Wisconsin, offers national telehealth consultations through Tuned Care. She collaborates with organizations like Music Cares to provide musicians with free consultations, helping prevent hearing loss and address music-induced hearing disorders. Whether working with artists or seasoned professionals, her mission is clear: to ensure career longevity and lifelong enjoyment of music. Beyond audiology, she's a passionate advocate for inclusivity and accessibility in the performing arts, currently pursuing a Master's of Fine Arts in Theater Education. She's uniting her love for music, theater, accessibility to creative impact changes in her community. Recognized nationally in the Distinguishing Early Career Professional Award by the American Speech Language Hearing Association, she continues to inspire and educate. When she's not revolutionizing hearing care for musicians, you'll find her trout fishing, raising monarch butterflies, or championing accessibility in the arts. So let's dive right into the conversation here, helping musicians hear their best for years to come. So Hannah, welcome to the Wisconsin Music Podcast.
Thank you so much, Zach. I'm very honored to be here, and it's a pleasure. So thank you so much.
I'm glad you're here. This is something that's very near and dear to me, as many artists out there as well. Can you kind of give us your journey into audiology and how your background in music and theater has influenced this path for you?
Yes, absolutely. So growing up, I did a lot of theater, and I have to thank my mom. She's a musician, and she's also a music therapist. So growing up, I went to a lot of symphonies and musicals and plays. I did theater throughout high school and absolutely loved it. So going into college, I knew I wanted to help people. And I also love science and acoustics. So audiology just seemed like the perfect mixture of science and music and performing arts and helping people. And so when I went into it, I really had a desire and a primary desire to be able to help musicians and performing artists in their journeys, wherever that might be. And so it's been nothing but rewarding to be able to pursue this really specialized area of audiology.
Why do you describe ears as the most important instrument?
That's a great question. And I like to describe ears as your most important instrument because really, I think most of us take our hearing for granted. And whether we're communicating with people, talking with other people, listening to our favorite music, birds, just environmental sounds, we really rely on our hearing for navigating daily life. And so I like to put it in the perspective that our ears are really important and they should be treated as if they were your most important instrument. So whether you play an instrument that you have to carry around, whether it's your singing voice or whatever that instrument looks like, your ears should be considered something to be taken well care of. And so that's why I like to emphasize that your ears or hearing is just as important as the instrument that you play.
Right, exactly. And then my father, who is a musician himself, who played music for a long time back, in the 60s and 70s, with loud amplifiers blasting at his ears while he's sitting behind the drum set with cymbals clashing left and right. He's got, tinnitus, and he's got good days and bad days. So I don't want to see that happening to myself. As a band director, I have multiple instruments playing at me for 80 minutes a day, every day. So I want to know how to protect my ears as well as other musicians out there. What are the most common hearing challenges faced by musicians, and how can we address them?
Yes, of course, there's hearing loss, and we call it in the audiology world music-induced hearing loss. And when we think about hearing loss due to music, we love music and we love experiencing it, we love playing it. And so the goal is not to eliminate music, but how can we do so in a safe way? There are other music-induced hearing disorders that are pretty common in the music world. One that you had mentioned is tinnitus or tinnitus. That's a very common complaint, especially among musicians. About 40% of people have some sort of ringing, buzzing, hissing sounds. The other one is hyperacusis, which is a decreased sound tolerance, and that can be certain sounds or average daily sounds that can affect someone's ability to have tolerance for those kinds of sounds. There's dysacousis, which is distortion. So it could be a certain frequency or a frequency range or a certain timbre of an instrument. And then the last one is diplacousis, which is altered pitch perception. So one ear may be hearing one pitch and the other ear might be hearing a different pitch. So you can imagine that experiencing any of those music-induced hearing disorders can really be detrimental to one's career.
Yes.
And really takes the joy out of playing or music listening. And so what we're trying to do is avoid music-induced hearing disorders, but also hearing loss as well, music-induced hearing loss.
Right.
And there are a few ways to combat that. And I always like to tell people it's never too early, but it's not too late too. If you do have hearing loss, it's not too late to protect what you have. But even if you don't perceive that you have a problem, it's not too early to start protecting your hearing. So the biggest thing that I like to recommend are sound safety scales. Most people have heard of OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They have their own safety scale. There's another one called NIOSH, a National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. And so really what we're looking at is decibel level or volume, and then duration. How long can we be in that situation for before it is going to cause permanent hearing damage? And so the NIOSH scale starts at 85 decibels, and they say you're safe for 8 hours. Then you add 3 decibels, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually doubling the intensity of sound. So when you double the intensity of sound, for example, at 88 decibels, you're safe for 4 hours, 91, 2 hours, and so on.
Gotcha.
So those sound safety scales are super important. So I do like to recommend following NIOSH, but I like to also mention OSHA because it's best to follow at least one scale versus nothing at all. So that's the first thing I would start with is sound safety scales. And you might ask me, well, how can I measure how loud it is in my environment? If you don't have a sound level meter, which would be cool if everyone did, but if you don't, there are apps that you can download on the iPhones called NIOSH, NIOSH. And for Android, there's something called Decibel X. It works the same way. It takes a sound sample in the environment and kind of measure how loud it is and give you an idea of how long you can be in that situation for before it's going to be permanently damaging.
Excellent. So if you use one of these decibel meters, they have A weighting, C weighting, they have these different kind of weights. What's the weight that you should be looking at, and what's the difference between them?
Yes, great question. There are different classifications of the weighting. Like you had said, it's A weighting, and that's mainly in like environmental. And there are also different decibel measurements as well. So it's dB, SPL, sound pressure level, and we're doing it on an A weighting scale. If I recall correctly, there's like a Z rating, which we don't really use too much in audiology world, and then C weighting. But the A weighting is the biggest thing that I'd want to focus on. So if someone does have a sound level measurement tool, they should have it in the A weighting setting. But if it is an app, usually it just defaults to that on their phone.
Now, to protect our ears as musicians, I mean, we still want to be able to hear everything as clearly as possible because we are dependent on our hearing to make sure that we are comfortable with, performing and practicing and all the things that we have to do to become, the best musician we want to be. But sometimes, even for myself, I've even gone to audiologists and gotten, special ear modes made and the special, dampeners and everything that goes with that, and it just doesn't sound right. And it's like I want to protect my ears, but I also want it to sound as clear as possible. So what all alternatives are there out there that we could use to lower the level but also not take away, decrease certain frequencies that kind of makes everything kind of sound a little underwater or something to that effect?
Yeah, there are a few options out there. And one option I do recommend and have helped people with is a filtered earplug. And those do have a flat frequency response. Of course, it's give or take. It's not perfectly flat. But that does allow you to still hear the clarity and brilliance of music while still protecting your ears. Those come in different filter strengths usually 9, 15, and 25 dB. So you can pick which one works best for you. The biggest difficulty with those is just the ear training. So a lot of people don't like to have something in their ears while they're playing, or even singing can be a problem. But really, when you think about it in the long run, wearing them is going to be a lot better than not wearing them. So it takes a lot of ear training. However, the other thing I would emphasize is to make sure that whoever you're seeing that's doing the ear mold impressions does a really good job in being able to take nice deep ear mold impressions of the full, mainly the full ear canal. With music audiologists, we like to go a little bit deeper than the average ear mold impression, but that'll give it a nice fit. And then also being able to do some jaw movements while the ear mold impression is being taken. And that way we can get all like the nice landmarks, and it can be really representative of how you're either playing or singing, for example. So when I have musician patients that want ear mold impressions, I always have them bring their instrument and play it while the ear molds are setting. So fit and like seal is a huge deal as well. So if you don't have a really good fit or a seal on the ears, that can play a huge role in how well you're going to hear and if there's any type of leakage of sound.
Right.
There is another option out there that I think not a lot of people know about, but it's something called the 3DME. It stands for three-dimensional music enhancement device. It acts like an in-ear monitor, but it is, quote, tunable. So you could, it's kind of like an intermediary device where you'd plug it into an app, and there are 7 frequency bands that you can tune. Of course, 7's not a lot,
Right.
but it does give people something. And what's neat about that one is it does have ambient microphones. So you're still able to hear surroundings around you, but also tune the gain where you need it in different frequency ranges. And so people with hearing loss do enjoy using the 3DME because they can tune where they need it, where their hearing loss is. But they can also have the option to turn the ambient microphones on or off so they can still hear what's around them. I personally tried them myself, and it was really insane how I had something in my ear, like pretty much occluding my whole ear, but I could still hear as if I had nothing in my ears. So the microphones on there are really well built. So that's another option for people. The one thing I would emphasize, though, of course, in-ear monitors are not inherently safety devices. So you have the autonomy to be able to turn up your in-ear monitors to a level that's dangerous.
Yeah.
So I just want to emphasize that even though you have something in your ears, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is safe.
Gotcha. Okay. And for musicians that, for example, someone that's been dealing with tinnitus for so long that it's, even affects like listening to people talking to them, you hear about, take this drug or try this exercise, or, it can help reduce or eliminate tinnitus, but knowing up to today, there is no real solution to this at the moment, correct?
Unfortunately, yes, that's correct. So really what it is management. Like, how can we manage it? How can we stabilize it? So a lot of the times I recommend people, if it's bothersome at night, use a white noise machine or a fan to just mask the sound. And that's essentially what we're doing, is masking it. Throughout the day, usually there are environmental sounds. You don't really notice it as much because there's a lot more going on. However, if it gets to the point where it's interfering with everyday function and mental health, that's definitely when we would want to seek some help. There are apps out there that people can download, and those are more self-guided and management strategies. They can create their own soundscapes, and what the idea is to kind of train the brain to react to the ringing, buzzing, hissing sounds in more of a neutral way. Not a negative way, because then it just becomes a vicious cycle of anxiety, and then the blood pressure rises, and then you're prone to more ringing because the blood pressure is a little bit higher. Other things, like, not always, but sometimes people say to avoid caffeine because that also raises blood pressure. Not for everybody, but if you're able to avoid caffeine, sometimes that can exacerbate the ringing sounds, but not always. So I just like to point that out. But yes, okay. You're correct. There's no magic pill that we could just take to have it go away.
Right, because basically if I'm understanding right, it's the damage of the little hairs basically around your eardrum that's been damaged, correct?
Yes, there's there's three parts to the ear, outer, middle, and inner ear. And the inner ear has the organ of hearing called the cochlea. And that cochlea has hair cells. We call them hair cells, not like the hair that grows in your body, but they are sensory cells that code the frequencies that we're hearing and then send it to the brain, and the brain makes sense of it all. So when those hair cells or those sensory cells are damaged in some way, it can cause ringing, but it can also cause hearing loss. And it can take one instance of loud sound, and we call that acoustic trauma, or it can be cumulative. So even people that might have been exposed to loud sounds at a young age, it can reflect what their hearing status looks like today.
Gotcha. Okay. I mentioned in the opening that your partnership with Music Cares. So can I talk a little bit about how working with that in hearing care for musicians works together for this?
Yes, this is so incredible. So the company that I work with is called Tuned, and Tuned Care is a new platform that helps people have access to hearing care through telehealth. And so, as far as audiology speaking, it's kind of a new way to access hearing care. So, Tune has partnered with Music Cares to be able to provide annual hearing consultations for people on an annual basis with a specialized music audiologist like myself. And so, with that meeting or consultation, you're able to receive a hearing screener, a digits and noise screener, because one of the main concerns is I can't hear in background noise. So we do a screener for that. And then we have an hour with you to talk about your concerns, provide personalized recommendations for you. And it really is a great way to receive hearing care, whether a musician is touring. So if they're on the road, have different hours. We also accommodate to those scheduling hours as well. So it's a really great way to be able to see where your hearing is at, but also to have an annual checkup and see, all right, what are the goals? The main goal is to stabilize the hearing, and then a year later to see, has that hearing stabilized, or what are some other things that we can work on, or what are some other things that we can do. And through that partnership as well, you don't have to be a member of Music Cares to partake in this consultation, but they also get a free set of filtered earplugs that are universally fit. So that's also a great way to start protecting the hearing from a more preventative standpoint.
Excellent. And speaking of universal fit, what are some of the ones that you recommend for those that can't afford to go to an audiologist to get, the special molds made, or the 3D one that you had mentioned a little bit earlier?
Yeah, the one brand that I do recommend is something called Etymotic Research. And the ones that I recommend are called ER20XS. And the 20 just means it's a 20 decibel filter, of course, give or take. Mm-hmm. Those are universally fit. You can get those on Amazon. It varies depending on how many tips you want it to come with. But I believe the ones that have 3 different tips, foam, and 2 sizes of silicone is about $23 or $25 on Amazon. So really not too bad. Of course, they're reusable, and I do have a pair myself that I use, as well as my own customs, but I take them everywhere I go. And I think that that is a great way, if you're able to afford the ER20XS ones, the Etymotic Research, that's a great starting point. Of course, I do recommend as musicians, if you're able to invest in a custom pair, to look for that in the future if you're able to, just because they do last 5 to 7 years if you take good care of them. And it is a great investment for your hearing to protect what you have in the long run, and also for the longevity of one's career.
Excellent. Great. Thank you so much for that. Just want to let you know that my recording studio, ZTF Studio, has now been open for the last 6 months. For over 20 years, I've been helping artists like you bring your music to life with high-quality recordings and mixing. At ZTF Studio, it's not just about recording. It's about capturing your best performance, finding the perfect mix, and making sure your music sounds exactly how you imagined it, or even better. Whether you're a band, solo artist, or need professional voiceover work, I got you covered. I know how much music means to you because as a musician myself, it means a lot to me as well. That's why I put everything I've got into making sure that your recordings are polished, powerful, and ready to stand out. So if you're ready to take your sound to the next level, let's make it happen. Contact me at ztfstudio@gmail.com. Call me at 262-757-8120. Check out some recordings that I have up on my website at ztfstudio.com. I also have Instagram, which is under ZTF_studio. Contact me whenever you have any questions or would like to book a session. Thanks. What do you think the biggest misconception musicians have about hearing health?
I think there's a lot of stigma, and maybe the stigma is getting better, but I think a lot of people might not understand like wearing hearing protection, or I have a lot of people that say, well, I wish I would have known this, or I wish I would have known about the sound safety scales, or when I was younger, I didn't have any care in the world. So I think a lot of it is just, and my goal as an audiologist is to educate and advocate. And I don't know how people's opinions are about wearing earplugs, but I don't think anyone should be ashamed of wearing any type of ear gear, as long as you're wearing it safely and consistently. And it is my hope that we can kind of change that stigma of wearing any type of like earplugs. But I also do know that like on a treatment standpoint, when people are ready to wear hearing aids, or their hearing status would imply that they could use a hearing device, a lot of the times they don't want to go that route because they're ashamed of that stigma as well as of wearing a hearing aid. And so a lot of the times we say, well, it's more noticeable that you have a hearing loss than it is if you were to just wear a hearing aid. But to each their own, because everyone's on their own journey, and I can't necessarily tell people to wear a hearing device if they don't want to, but it is something that we're trying to combat. And a lot of the hearing technology now has come a long way to help people. Of course, there are limitations, especially with music. Of course, hearing aids are mainly meant for speech and the speech spectrum. So there are challenges there as well. But I think as a whole, it's just the more we can educate and advocate, the more people understand.
I was going to ask you about hearing aids because, as we get older, hearing loss is just, it happens to everybody, I believe, pretty much. And for a musician to wear hearing aids, it like you said, it's mostly for speech, so it kind of distorts, I think. I've never had to wear them myself, but from what I understand, it distorts it in such a way that they can't enjoy music either playing or listening. Is there new research out there that's trying to fix that, or are they not really focused on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's hard too, as musicians, we don't all, depending on the genre and how loud the music is, we don't necessarily recommend that people wear hearing aids while they either listen to music or music play, because the hearing aids aren't protecting devices. They can actually amplify to a point that it can be more damaging. So it's a very tricky situation, and there's really no solution that's perfect. The 3D ME that I had mentioned earlier has helped a lot of people with hearing loss while music playing. But really, there's more research especially in the cochlear implant world, of how people can process music wearing a cochlear implant or hearing aids, and how we can do so. But we're just so limited at this time with the technology that's out there, that they're really trying to work hard to make hearing aids more of like a bigger spectrum. So when we're thinking about the speech frequencies, if you go to a normal audiologist, they might test 250 through 8,000, but we know that music frequencies are well above that, 9,000 through 20,000 hertz. And that's what I like to test for as a music audiologist. We recommend testing the ultra high frequencies. But unfortunately, with hearing aids, there's just more of a roll off effect after usually 4,000 or 6,000. So it's really difficult to be able to have something like a device that works well for music processing. I know there are some devices out there that have like a music mode, but again, it's not going to be perfect, unfortunately.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that. So you've received the Early Career Professional Award. What is that, and what does it mean to you?
Yes, I was really honored to receive that award coming out of grad school and opening up my business, Melody Audiology. And I think for me, it's really been, I've just been so grateful to be able to pursue this career path that's in audiology pretty unconventional. And like no one tells you, here's how to be a music audiologist. It's really just based on like passion and making connections with people and also having a theater background. I call myself a theater audiologist as well because I do advocate a lot for the theater world. And I'm like, well, theater audiologist, that sounds a little funny, but I also have felt really, really blessed to be able to pursue a path where I can unite my passions. But not only that, it's really to help people. Like, how can I help people using the gifts that I have? So that award was I was just very grateful to receive that award, but really it's been fueling me in my future to be able to keep helping people in ways because as a music audiologist, I really want to help people and they might not have had an answer from like a clinic or a hospital. And so if someone's a musician that's really seeking answers from a music side, I really want to be able to help fill that need. So it really has fueled me to keep going and pursue these passions of mine through audiology.
Is there a dangerous level on the stage for theater people for hearing loss?
That's a great question. And it will just depend on the sound safety scales. Theater, sometimes it really depends, where they're standing on stage. And this goes for anyone, any musician in a band, what your position is on stage. Are you next to the drummer? What side are you on? Are you downstage, upstage? And it really comes down to sound safety scales. I know that some genres of music can be quite loud. So some theater music can be loud depending on that genre. I've spoken with a few people that are in the opera world, and although they don't always use microphones, they are singing very loudly in each other's ears. So that's also something to consider too, is even more of the classical side of things. People in symphonies, symphony orchestras where they sit. You had mentioned as a band director, having all that sound coming right at you.
Yes.
So it really depends on the genre, but also position and the dB SPL level at the ear level.
Gotcha. Okay. So no matter what, if music's involved, just watch the levels and try to protect yourself as much as possible.
Definitely, yes. Using the sound safety scales and safe listening habits and earplugs.
So what are your long-term goals for raising awareness and expanding accessibility and hearing care in the music industry?
Yes, my long-term goals are really to continue to help people answer their questions, advocate, help people pick the right earplugs if they need that. Also educate on the music-induced hearing disorders. I'd really like to, even though I'm located in central Wisconsin, I'd really like to expand throughout the state and through Music Cares and Tuned, I'm able to reach people nationwide. And so I hope to continue to do that. From a theater standpoint, I really hope I can advocate for just more accessibility within the theaters and how we can make theater inclusive for everyone. So from an audiology standpoint, that might be like more captioning. You may have heard of some loop systems, and that helps people that have a telecoil in their hearing aid to be able to hear what people are saying. And so a lot of it is just more awareness. And I think when we have more awareness, that people are just more knowledgeable of what is out there. And therefore, people who are deaf or hard of hearing or have any other type of disability would be able to be included, whether that is a music venue or a theater space. But also, I think we're learning a lot about like sound levels and noise levels, and sound or loud sound isn't always better. Louder isn't always better. So I think a lot of spaces as well, if we had some sort of like decibel meter, just to give people awareness of the numbers and just say, if your ears are ringing at the end of the night, there's damage. That's definitely a sign of damage. Or there's noise pollution. That's a term that is fairly new, but that's also a thing in the world, is just how much input are we putting in our ears, whether it's background noise, traffic noise, podcasts. We're always just listening to something. And so we're learning to just give the brain a break, even 10 to 15 minutes a day, is just really good for the brain to reset. So I think a lot of just more awareness and being able to help people that way, and also an architectural standpoint as well.
As a high school band director, I see high schoolers walking the hallways in classrooms in before and after school, and they have earplugs in, or not earplugs, but they have the earphones in all the time. It looks like.
Yeah.
Do you see that this is going to be a major detriment to their hearing as they get older, because they constantly have something going on in their pretty much 24/7?
Oh, yeah. And unfortunately, we've already seen it in research that even as young as like 10 or 11-year-olds are showing signs of noise-induced hearing loss. And noise-induced hearing loss is very similar to music-induced hearing loss, but we kind of classify noise as like loud sound, machinery. It kind of coincides with music-induced hearing loss as well, because if they're listening to music loudly through a device, that can cause hearing loss. So we're seeing that in even 10, 11, 12-year-olds. There's something called a noise notch. Usually happens between 3,000 to 6,000 kilohertz. And so as an audiologist, if I see that there's a dip, either 3, 4, or 6, and then it rises back up, that's a sign of damage. And we're seeing that in even younger people because they have autonomy to turn up levels of their phone, tablets, video games, whatever it is. And it's actually pretty scary because it's permanent. It really is, from a young age until when they get older. How they listen to devices is really going to affect what their hearing status is. And unfortunately, they might be seeking more treatment type care at an earlier age. So it's really important that if there's any type of output limiter on a device, I know that the iPhone has an output limiter. If there are any other devices or people or devices or toys or any type of thing that has volume control, that is definitely something that we'd want to consider.
Do you feel that earpods or headphones would be better?
I think, not sure if one is better than the other. It really comes down to the sound levels again.
Okay.
And sometimes people say, well, the earbuds are closer to the ear canal because you're actually putting them in. So there is a chance that it could be a little bit louder because there is something like there is a boost in the ear canal that it gives us this resonance. It's a natural boost. But then also usually headphones go around the ear and they're just a little bit further than the earbuds. But I think generally speaking, if either one of them is at a loud level that could be damaging, it could be detrimental. So either one, if you're going to use one or the other, definitely consider how loud that it is. And there is a rule out there. It's called the 80-90 rule. Don't have your volume at 80% for more than 90 minutes. So that's just a little thing or a little tidbit that someone could follow. But generally speaking, I like to follow the NIOSH and OSHA skills.
Excellent. All right, it's time for the quick answers here. The first thing that comes to your mind, and just short answers. Here we go. Earplugs or noise-canceling headphones?
Earplugs.
Okay. Favorite genre of music to unwind to?
Jazz.
What's one thing most people don't realize about audiologists?
We're cool. We're nice.
The most surprising thing you've learned from working with musicians?
Everything. Everyone has a story. And I also love receiving music from my patients, the music that they create. It's amazing.
Fantastic. If you could collaborate with any musician, living or not, who would it be?
Oh, gosh. Any musician? It's got to be my mom.
Okay. What's your favorite theater production of all time?
Phantom of the Opera.
One tip you give musicians to protect their hearing during performances?
Filtered earplugs for sure.
What's your best advice you'd ever received about balancing your passions?
Your passions fuel your purpose. So even if you think that your passions are silly, they never are, because you're always going to be able to help someone with the gifts that you've been given.
Nice. Last one. Monarch butterflies or trout fishing, which brings you more peace?
Oh, that's so difficult. But as of now, it's trout fishing. Love it. Absolutely. Love getting my waders on and getting into the creek. Nothing like it.
Is there anything else you would like listeners to know about audiology, hearing protection, or anything else?
I think we covered the majority of it. So I'm really happy that you had such great questions because we really dove deep into some of those topics. But if anyone is curious to learn more, they're more than welcome to reach out to me via email. I can definitely answer questions, or you can look me up at melodyaudiologyllc.com. And then I also have a Facebook account and Instagram.
Wonderful. So thank you so much, Hannah, for being on the Wisconsin Music Podcast. It was great learning about all these great things that us musicians and non-musicians even need to know about protecting our hearing. And I'm glad there's people out there like you that are out there to educate us and help us keep our hearing as healthy as possible.
Thank you so much, Zach. Appreciate it.
Have a great night.
Yes, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, that was another great interview with Hannah, Dr. Roik, our gold certified audiologist here in Wisconsin. So much thanks to her experience, her expertise, and passion that is transforming the way musicians approach their hearing health. So I hope you got a lot of great information, and musicians and everybody else as well. Protect your ears, even at concerts. Sometimes that stuff gets way too loud. So go and get yourself at least some kind of protection out there to make sure your ears stay with you as long as possible. For those of you who are new to our show, the Wisconsin Music Podcast is dedicated to showcasing the incredible talent of Wisconsin-based musicians and the thriving local music community. Our episodes drop every Tuesday on all streaming platforms and YouTube. If you'd like to be on the show, just go to wisconsinmusicpodcast.com, fill out the guest request form up at the top, ask for your email and your name, and then I'll send you an auto email asking you for more information. If you are enjoying these episodes, please consider donating to the Wisconsin Music Podcast. Donations help pay for the website and putting the podcast up on streaming services, and also getting our name out there to all Wisconsinites and others that are interested in our great music here in Wisconsin. Donations are secure through PayPal and Stripe. All you have to do is go to the website and click on Donate to WMP. You can also head over to our Instagram and Facebook pages and like us there. Leave some comments. Also go to the podcast review section of your podcast player and leave a 5-star review. Would be great. You can also head over to YouTube and watch the interviews and leave comments there as well. Well, thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Wisconsin Music Podcast. Once again, I'm Zach Fell, your host and creator of the Wisconsin Music Podcast, where I love to amplify the great sounds coming out of the Wisconsin state. We have great talent here, great support, great listeners. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you next time.